What up, perps? Kid Copious, back in effect. Purple State Party, you know what time it is. We're going to rep America, the center, common sense, freedom, and peace in the Middle East. Hell, peace in the world, because it is that time right now. It is fastly approaching Christmas. My favorite time of the year, other than the 4th of July. You know, I'm just looking forward to watching Christmas Vacation, going up and seeing all the lights, and going to the light show that they have at the Arboretum. And a new Christmas favorite for me is A Christmas Karen. Look for it. It was on like Pluto, Hulu, Roku channel. It's a low-budget film written with a lot of love. And for me, if you can end a movie with your best joke at the end, well, that's pretty good. Check it out. Christmas Karen. Anyhow, let's get to this show. Let's get this thing crack-a-lacking and popping. Oh, my ears are still ringing from that popper. I think I was a little too close to it, y'all. So let's kick this thing off. On Tuesday, the national Christmas tree there in Washington, D.C. got blown over. And, of course, there's a lot of memes and a lot of metaphors. At the end of the day, politics is a lot like a building. You're only as strong as your foundation. And, lately I'm not seeing a lot of hope or change coming out of these people. It's a shit show. But yeah, the tree blew over. Democrats nominate fallen national Christmas tree for presidential run. Couldn't be any worse. I mean, holy crap, man. I wonder what was older, the tree or Biden. It's not as bad as it looks, Bidenomics. Hey, I mean, it is what it is. I mean, does he take full responsibility for it? I don't know. How much did the pandemic play into it? I'm sure it played a part in it. But the attack on the fuel industry, that's that's the foundation of transportation, fuel. And transportation gets goods and services places. And when you make that more expensive, everything's going to be more expensive. That's just math. I mean, if you add 4, then it increases by 4. That's math. If you attack fuel, it's going to increase costs of things. Oh, the other big shit show that hit town, the Newsom-DeSantis debate to be sponsored by U-Haul. It's about true. I mean, the numbers aren't staggering. It's, somewhere around 20,000 more people moved from California to Florida than from Florida to California. Seems kind of like a lateral move, I guess. I mean, at least climate-wise, except they got to deal with hurricanes down there. But, Newsom, this was on Fox with Hannity, so, of course, Newsom warned it would be a 2-on-1 pile-on. And to be fair, I'm sure it was. But California does have a lot to answer for. High taxes, high gas prices, bad schools. I mean, the list really goes on. I mean, a lot of our towns are just absolutely dying. They're being packed with high-density housing, but there aren't jobs, and there isn't a support system there, I mean, when they do those things, the retail with the apartments above them, if the landlord can fill the retail and 30% of the apartments, and 10% of those are low-cost subsidized housing, what do the retailers really get? And then the retailers leave, and then the bums move in, and slowly you just get this decay. But back to the debate here. Newsom tried to flip the crime question by pointing out that Florida has higher murder and gun violence in California, where gun laws are much, more strict. Criminals don't pay attention to those laws, okay? And here in California, we've kind of reclassified a lot of things. So, but whatever. DeSantis filmed a campaign ad in the Tenderloin that showed that public safety had collapsed in California. As he says, in a lot of these places in California, everything's under lock and key because they basically legalized retail theft. They have chosen in California to put the interest of the criminals over public safety. See, and that's just a bad idea. It's wobbly. I mean, again, I don't see how Newsom could ever win that debate. I mean, I don't know. I haven't been to Florida. but I'm not seeing collapses of their cities. It's not in the papers, and I would assume that being that most of the media is, out to get the right, if Florida really had some shitty problems going on, I'm sure we'd know about it. Clickety click. Got to remember that. Got to zoom back out. So then, DeSantis brought up that Newsom's own in-laws had relocated to Florida. Newsom later referred to Newsom as weak, pathetic, and small. Okay, so what? That's not a really good argument. See, DeSantis makes the argument, hey, things are so bad in California, your in-laws moved to Florida. What's the retort to that? And of course, they talked about the lockdowns. Newsom's defense was that more people died in Florida. But again, that's has a lot to do with population, age of population and stuff. DeSantis' points were that you shut down the economy while you ate dinner at the French Laundry. You kept students out of the classrooms, but his own kids went back to private school. See, DeSantis, even if he failed in Florida, tried to do what was best for the whole state. All right? Gavin, being in the one-party state where you don't have to answer for shit, he wrote the rules so that the elite could continue on their lives while the rest of us had to suffer. See, that's the big difference. That's that wobbly foundation again. That's that's the main reason, really. I mean, I understand Republicans have bad ideas. I understand their justifications. And some of it is like, well, it's all what you believe. Whereas with the Democrats, it's just shaky from the start. It's, it's just shaky. It's just skewered towards the elite getting to do what they want while the rest of us have to suffer. I don't necessarily see that coming out of the Republicans. But right here, I think, is where DeSantis wins it. He whipped out a printout from the user-generated app tracking human feces found on the streets of San Francisco. All right? He says that Newsom's spiraling homelessness crisis, which has gotten so bad that human feces is now a fact of life. I mean, literally, last week, doing a job, there was a giant pile of human shit right by the gate that I had to go through. All right? Gavin talks about freedom in California. DeSantis retorts, yeah, you have the freedom to pitch a tent on Sunset Boulevard. You have the freedom to create a homeless encampment under a freeway and even light it on fire. Part of our freeway was closed because of a fire, more than likely started by a homeless encampment. They're responsible for 50% of the fires in California. So, that's the truth. We also, you go out by where all the famous people, Forest Lawn, where all the famous people are buried, and there's movie studios, and there's just rows and rows and rows of RVs. People living in the RVs. You look around and you see homes around that area, and you realize you are at this weird freaking nexus, dude, of the most expensive and yet the cheapest property prices in the country. I ain't shitting you. I mean, when pitching tents on Sunset Boulevard, it's not cheap if you were to live on Sunset Boulevard. It's mostly retail, but that's expensive real estate, and you could just pitch a tent. See, I don't mind if you're pitching a tent far removed from the city in a lot that's owned by the state that they're not doing anything about it. It's just an empty lot. It's far removed from things. If you set a fire, it ain't going to burn much but the encampment. Maybe that's an answer. But just let them set up wherever. I think DeSantis easily won that debate. I don't even think it's a competition. All right? I'm not saying DeSantis is perfect. I'm not saying all of his policies, such as abortion, are right. But if we're talking about who won the debate, who's doing better as a state, DeSantis won. Babylon Bee sums it up. Nation in shock after Gavin Newsom murdered on live TV. But the media, what do they show? There's Gavin laying on the mat. DeSantis is still ready to fight. He's got that video game pose going. You know what I'm talking about. And the obvious winner is Gavin Newsom, proclaims the mainstream media. Because that's all they care about. They can say that, and the people who follow them follow so loosely that they'll hear that headline without ever doing the research. They're just going to take the New York Times or the LA Times or whatever fucking paper you want to talk about, or websites or cable news channel. Because they don't listen to Fox News. We know this. They're listening to their echo chamber. And their echo chamber could say Gavin won. But the reality is, it possibly was that Newsom's wife threw in the towel when the debate was going to be extended. She wanted it ended because, as we mentioned earlier, DeSantis brought up her parents moving to Florida. Newsom aides also raised several issues with Fox. For one, the printed props DeSantis pulled out on the stage were, according to the aide, supposed to be prohibited as part of the ground rules. The poop map. Your boy lost on the poop map, so now you're going to say he shouldn't have had the poop map. Great. Maybe he violated the rules. Doesn't make the poop map any less true. And that's what the media tries to do to us. All right. Oh, that was against the rules. Yes. But the poop map still exists. Poop, all over the streets. They're all over our streets. We've seen people taking shits. We've seen people taking pisses at bus stops. These are things that me, my wife, and my daughter all have witnessed together. A family experience in California. Watching a guy take a shit in the jewelry district. Oh, yeah. Oh, hell yeah. It's true. It's not media spin. It's not something that's being blown out of proportion. But, when it comes to the left, it's fine when the media covers for you. But not your opponent. And right now, they have latched on to the fact that college kids are very pro-Palestinian. It's very easy to paint Israel as the oppressor and Hamas as the freedom fighters. NPR let a Palestinian journalist claim that Hamas using human shields has been debunked. Both the Clintons, Hillary and Bill, believe Barack, all said that Hamas uses human shields. When you put a military base in a hospital, human shield. When you put a rocket launcher on top of a school, human shield. There don't even need to be humans in there. The threat of blowing up a hospital makes Israel think twice. Because good guys don't want to kill civilians. Bad guys don't give a shit. But again, the headlines were Israel restarts bombing. But they were fairly silent when Hamas actually broke the truce. They fired rockets into Jerusalem. They shot and murdered civilians at a bus stop. And yet Biden and Blinken chastise Israel. Why? Because they've seen that the youth are siding with the Palestinians. So Blinken and Biden are going to do all of these things to come down on Israel. And you know why? Because liberals, more than the other side, want to be the boss. They think they know better. Biden wants to boss people around. He can boss Israel, but what, you think Biden can boss Hamas around? Well, now, theoretically, we could. Because if we put boots on the ground, we could wipe them out. In fact, we don't even need to put boots on the ground. Let's be honest. If we really wanted to make Gaza just disappear, we could just flat out murk that entire piece of sand. We just reduce it, turn it into a lake. But now, that's not where the college students lie. I pulled this from the New York Times. After hospital blast, headlines shift with changing claims. The fast-moving events highlighted the difficulty of covering the war between Israel and Hamas. That's kind of an interesting one. Why would they post that? Well, because as we're going to get into a little bit later, they got caught in a lie. Because if you take your information from Hamas, what do you expect? So they were talking about how Israel blew up a hospital. In reality, it was a Hamas rocket. But that's not what they ran with. And that's what they're continually doing right now. They're continually taking the side of Palestine because they need the people in the streets lighting shit on fire, destroying monuments. They need this stuff. First of all, people want to tune into CNN to watch people pull down the Statue of Liberty. Imagine that. If the pro-Palestinian group decided that they wanted to pull down something in Times Square, people are going to watch, right? So we're going to pump it up anytime we could throw out some fake numbers. But the reality is this. From the Atlantic to the Pacific, they need terrorism. They need the population unbalanced, unhinged, unstable. Because if we don't have anything else to do, we're going to watch them. And if we start watching them, we're not going to like what we see. So as many distractions as possible. Because remember, the people who are setting these things in motion have armed bodyguards. They are immune to the consequences of their decisions. They like to paint it as though the people in Gaza are innocent. But yet, Crevoy here, a sound technician at the Supernova rave party, was taken prisoner. He was escaped, and he hid out for 4 days. He tried to reach the border, but in the end, the Gazans caught him and returned him to the terrorists. How innocent are these people? And then Hamas releases him as a gesture to Putin. So Hamas, supported by the Palestinians, is siding with Russia, but the pro-Palestinian people are siding with Ukraine. You don't even know what you're doing. And one of the reasons you don't know what you're doing is because of the Ministry of Truth. Quote, Ministry of Truth. Sends proof of inflation down the memory hole. Memory hole is where things go when they're never going to be talked about again. And one of those, it's reference right there. So it's all from 1984. Now, the problem with looking at Orwell's 1984 is that we are seeing it unfold in front of us. We can see the results, but that's another discussion. This is, I get off track so easy, don't I? And blame it on my ADD. Federal judges, even from the Fifth Circuit, are saying that this is federally coerced censorship. What they are doing with the TikToks, the Instagrams, the Facebooks, the Twitters, X. They're disseminating propaganda to manipulate and control public perception. But this whole alarm was sounded because somebody said that they had to pay $16.10 for a novelty burger with fries and a Sprite. The complaint originated as a TikTok video. And it was saying that, look how much prices have raised. And they have. A Big Mac has gone up 10% since 2020. What happened in 2020? Something. But millions saw the video and it sparked debate about Biden and out-of-control inflation. And his office, the White House Office of Digital Strategy, labeled it one of the most exaggerated examples of the nation's economic woes. So they've begun working with TikTok creators to tell positive stories of Biden's economic stewardship, while also working with social media platforms to counter misinformation. I don't care what the burger was. A $16 combo from McDonald's is a bit high. I mean, considering it's only going to go higher. And when it comes on the heels of things like the talk about election fraud or Hunter Biden's laptop, it gets people worried. So right now we have a case pending, Missouri versus Biden, that shows how unrelenting pressure from the world's most powerful leader led social media firms to bend to the government's will. Look, if the Democrats have a good idea, I want it to move forward. But if they're just going to lie and manipulate, that needs to be, and that's what I expect out of the other side too. That's a great thing. When I go around family and they're arguing about politics, I'm purple. I'm not taking the side of red or blue. I'm taking the side of whichever one makes more sense. I don't want to be lied to. I'm old school. Propaganda is a dirty word. To me, propaganda is one of the dirtiest words. Voters don't like the economy and they blame the president. And inflation is off of its peak of 9.1, and the cost of things haven't come down. Why? Because once they get up there, they stay up there. Only 14% of Yanks report being better off than they were 4 years ago. And Biden is scrambling to censor their complaints. And if you look at that 14%, how many of that were people who were already rich? How many of those people simply got a job in 2020 or got out of college and started their career in 2020? How many of those people are just lying? You throw all those people together that Biden didn't have very much to do with, and you only come up with 14%. Just because the rate of rise has slowed doesn't mean it's not a rise. And they're arguing, oh, we shouldn't say a silent depression, a sense of dread. And Biden doesn't understand why all of this, because inflation is a manageable 3%, which is 50% higher than the Fed's inflation target, which is, I believe, 1.5%. Look, if things go up 1% every year, I mean, it does sort of make sense depending on what we're talking about. Some things should be falling. Some things should be rising, obviously. Especially newer technology, it's going to be more expensive. Older technology that's been refined should be coming down in price, and it has been to some degree, but it's stopped. But the prices haven't gone down. Fuel prices haven't gone down. Rent hasn't gone down. Now, you know what? We got time for this. Progressive mayors demand $1.5 billion for the drug crisis they created. Now they want money. Seattle, Portland, Philadelphia, San Francisco. The shitholes of our country right now. Portland legalized all their drugs, and they want U.S. taxpayers to pay to help clean up the mess that they created. And, Department of Health's opioid response is, if you're not tackling the border, then you're not doing anything about it. So, what have they done with the money in the past? I mean, Philadelphia, they had safe consumption sites, again, without providing any means to get off of the drugs. They just enable the drug use. Same thing in San Francisco. They distribute drug smoking kits. They help you do your high, but there's no information for how you can get clean. And their downtown is now at a 33% vacancy rate. Let's just call that 34%, 33.9. 34% of the buildings are empty. Every building that goes empty leads to more buildings going empty. It's a fucking spiral. And they just want money, but they don't do anything about it. Blindly pouring money into harm reduction strategies is a bottomless pit that will lead to a vicious cycle of dependency on federal aid without resolving the underlying issues. Simple. Arrest a person, get them clean, get them back to their family, get them back on a right track. That's a solution. Simply allowing them to do it on the streets is a fucking cop-out. And again, the elite don't have to live with the consequences. Car dealers warn Biden an unrealistic green agenda must be abandoned. Americans not buying electric cars. Why would you? They're expensive. They're hard to maintain. Yeah, they are. For the average person, how are you going to maintain that charge? How are you going to factor that in to your day? I mean, think about the last time you went to like a major event. How long did you have to wait in line? Now imagine that line with a car, with each person taking 30 minutes, upwards of 30 minutes. Clickety click click. Yeah. So, last week I was quite exuberant about, the idea of 5 to 8 political parties, making people earn their vote, making them refine their ideas so that it can pass amongst a majority of people. Go, you know what, that is a good idea, and it stands on a firm foundation. But on NPR, they lamented the idea of a third party, making it more difficult to pass things. See, the elite want 2 parties that they can easily control, but we need 3 or more. Yes, it would make it more difficult to pass if we had, imagine if our government right now was divided amongst 4 political parties. You would need to pull in a group of 3 to get something passed. So the bad ideas would have to be chopped out. The unreasonable expectations would have to be tempered. Yeah, it'd be harder to get things to pass the way it's supposed to be. Another dumb story. There was a headline about a glacier that started moving. And they were like, oh, God, we're going to die. Look, it started moving for the first time in 30 years. 30 years ago? So 30 years ago, a glacier moved. And we're still here? Because climate change is natural. And as we're hearing reports right now of snow in Hawaii, Mother Nature does whatever the fuck she wants. There is forces that nobody can contain. All the world's money can't stop the world from spinning, right? So how can it do that with the climate? You can monetize it, which they have obviously done. Because they're cynical little bastards. Oh, we need to end all our reliance on fossil fuels except for our private jets. So how are me and Lovey going to get to Switzerland for Christmas time? Meanwhile, you got people out there who are struggling to pay their bills, and now, they've got to provide Christmas for their children. And you're flying around to Switzerland for your Christmas, talking about, oh, we're too reliant on fossil fuels. Yeah, well, your plane's too reliant on wings. Oh, Jesus Christ. People are fucking stupid. These politicians and these media types, whoever, they live in insulated worlds where like a $50 parking ticket or a 300% increase in heating costs isn't a blip. It's not a blip. It's just, to me, oh my God. The vast voting public, the citizens, the taxpayers, are an abstract to them. But they're not an abstract to me. I see them every day in the retail and warehouses, shops, stores, logistic places, schools. I see them everywhere. I press flesh with them every day. I hear their concerns, and I actually share their concerns because I am them. I'm a little bit better off than most, but I can't run my heater right now. Geez, it was like a $200 gas bill. I can't afford that. It ain't in the Christmas budget. Well, thanks for sticking with me. Like, subscribe, help us multiply. I'm Kid Copious, Purple State Party, and so are you. Love one another.